Yes, Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., the movie that looked at 1988, the year Hollywood was drunk on Titanic, the internet was something modern, and Marvel Comics had just filed for bankruptcy and decided the appropriate response was, you know what America really wants on a Tuesday night? David Hasselhoff in an eye patch fighting a woman called Viper with a poison kiss while Stan Lee signs off on the whole thing. Let's keep it 100. This movie aired on Fox on May 26, 1998. It finished fourth in the ratings. It was beaten by Jag reruns and the second half of Titanic, a film people had already seen. But here's the thing nobody talks about. The man who wrote this movie, he went on to write Blade, then Batman Begins, then Man of Steel. And if you want to understand how Marvel went from this to literally ruling the earth, you have to sit with that failure for a minute because it earned that right. Now, here's the context. Because context is king. By 1995, Marvel Comics was in free fall. The comic book bubble had burst. The company was bleeding cash and sold television rights to its properties to basically anyone who handed them a check. Marvel was throwing everything at the wall to see what stuck. The House of Ideas had become the House of Please God, something work. And for Nick Fury, they turned to the biggest star they could afford, David Hasselhoff, 8 seasons into Baywatch, 3 years removed from the Berlin Wall concert that launched 1,000 memes. Hasselhoff was the recognizable name for a certain demographic, and the script, they handed it to a young writer named David Goyer, who was simultaneously scripting Blade, and told him to make it work. Now, here's where it gets generally strange. Marvel's internal editorial staff pushed back on the Hasselhoff casting, not because of the acting, but because, and I quote, the show looked much closer to the comics than the Generation X telefilm had. They were fine with Hasselhoff aesthetically as long as the property was treated with respect. So, what is Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., the movie? Bad and lazy. What it actually is a 6 million backdoor pilot, one of the most expensive telefilms Fox had ever greenlit at that point, that takes the comics remarkably seriously. Fury had retired to a mine shaft in the Yukon. Hydra raids his shield facility, then defrosts Baron Wolfgang von Strucker. His daughter, Andrea von Strucker, codenamed Viper, reconstitutes a Nazi bioweapon called the Death Heads virus, developed by Arnim Sola, who is alive in a wheelchair and an oxygen mask. The cast is generally loyal to the source material. Lisa Rinna as Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, Val for short, Fury's former lover and field commander. Neil Roberts as a young Alexander Pierce, a character the MCU would later resurrect decades later in The Winter Soldier as Robert Redford. Sandra Hess chews the scenery gleefully as Viper. There's a life model decoy, which is a comic's accurate twist Goya clearly insisted on. And there's also a helicarrier. For a network TV movie in 1998, the fidelity to the source material is remarkable. And this is the part the retrospective always gets wrong. Hasselhoff gets it. Goya himself said in a pre Blade 2 interview, I was initially enthused about Hasselhoff's involvement. I think the film was pretty bland, but Hasselhoff turned out to be the best thing in it. He gets the joke. The script was meant to be very tongue in cheek, and Hasselhoff understood that. Full stop. Because that quote deserves to land. The writer of Blade and Batman Begins, a man who spent his career trying to make superhero films that meant something, calls this movie mediocre. But he credits Hasselhoff with understanding the assignment. That's not a backhanded compliment. It's a professional saying the movie was already limited, but the actor saved the atmosphere. What Hasselhoff brings is a Bronze Age physicality. He's not a tortured MCU hero wrestling with moral ambiguity. He's a cigar chomping, scene chewing intelligence chief in a world where the rules were written in a different era. And in a script designed to be self aware, that's exactly the frequency the movie needed. The problem wasn't Hasselhoff, the problem was everything Hasselhoff couldn't fix. So let's keep it a buck. The film has limited range for most of its supporting cast. The budget, generous by 1998 TV standards, still couldn't execute a world where flying cars and helicarriers are commonplace without feeling like a theme park ride that's been left out in the rain. The action sequences are competent at best. Death Head Virus MacGuffin is generic enough to have come from any late 90s action thriller. Marvel IP or otherwise. And Goya wasn't even on set. He'd written the script years earlier, and by the time cameras rolled, he was running Sleepwalkers, his own short lived series. The teleplay had been revised on set by Robert Magnuson. You can feel the distance. The movie has the bones of something interesting and the flesh of a Tuesday night filler project that knows its own limitations. What the film is, and this is the charitable but accurate read, is the last example of a Marvel B movie era, the long chain of low ambition, low budget superhero adaptations that stretches back through the 1979 Captain America TV movies, the 1978 Doctor Strange pilot, the Italian Captain America bootleg, and the 1994 Corman Fantastic Four disaster that was never meant to be released at all. Nick Fury is the final entry in that lineage. Not its worst, but unambiguously its last. May 26, 1998, Fox airs Nick Fury at 8 p.m. It finishes fourth in its time slot. Fourth, Jag reruns Beat It. The second half of Titanic, already a 5-month-old film people had seen in theaters, beat it. Fox had budgeted for a franchise. They had committed to multiple Shield telefilm projects if this one landed. None of that happened. Generation X, which had aired on February of the same year and barely made a ripple, was already cold. The She Hulk project quietly shelved. Fury didn't just fail, it closed the door. Fox had made its bet, the audience had shrugged, and the network moved on. Here's the grimly beautiful part. 4 months later, Blade hit theaters. Goya's screenplay, Wesley Snipes, Stephen Norrington directing, rated R, blood on the walls, a black superhero as the lead in a 45 million studio film, and it worked. 131 million at the box office, a franchise, a cultural reset. After all, the universe doesn't judge, it just lets the timing happen. Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. is remembered. When it's remembered at all as a campy footnote, the Hasselhoff movie, the weird 90s thing you find on YouTube at 2 a.m. But what it actually represents is a hinge point. Every creative decision that Goya couldn't execute here, the comics' accurate mythology, the ensemble of characters, the spy thriller aesthetic, the world building, he carried forward. Blade proved the IP faithful, tonally committed approach could work commercially. X-Men 2 years later proved it could work at scale, and the entire framework that eventually became the MCU is, in some warped genealogical sense, descended from a Fox Tuesday night movie that finished behind Jag. The characters have the gear, the helicraft is there, the eye patch is there. Hydra, Arnim Zola, Baron von Strucker, Val Dum Dum Dugan, all present, all recognizable. The pieces were assembled and the machine just wasn't built yet. Whatever. Classic. Although Goya had the vision, the network had the checkbook, but the universe had other plans. The human curiosity that tried to build a Marvel television empire in 1998 didn't get rewarded. It got fourth place, and the Wizard magazine mentioned this is peak cosmic indifference, not soft, not subtle, just a big network scheduling reminder that out there in the primetime landscape, something had already decided you were in the wrong time slot. If you want genuine video essays on cult television, retro animation, and forgotten pop culture, subscribe to Pulp Vision. Remember, this is the channel of no content farms, no trend chasing, and definitely no slop.